Turn now, as promised, to a former federal prosecutor who actually is one of the few people who served as an independent counsel, Robert Ray. He was actually the last independent counsel before Bob Mueller when the laws were structured differently. He led that Whitewater investigation against the Clintons. Succeeding Ken Starr, whose pursuit of the Clintons did lead to a House impeachment and a Senate acquittal. Thanks for being part of our special coverage tonight.
That's really me 20 years ago.
That's right. We do that with all of our guests.
Thanks, I appreciate that. That was a nice thing from me on a Sunday evening.
There you go. Preet Bharara also had a bit of that reaction. Bottom line, what do you think this outcome means tonight?
Look, Ari, I take your higher road message to heart, which I think is the right tone, and that was that I hope the public comes to respect the results of this investigation. We all, as citizens in this country, may have minor disagreements about, one thing or another, and I'm not suggesting that Congress doesn't have a continuing role to play here. But after 22 months, I think it was important today that what you saw is the department spoke as one voice. I agree with you that there's more to be seen, and the Attorney General is committed at least, to the maximum extent possible. And again, reasonable people can disagree about it, but more of the report will be forthcoming, I imagine. It's just a question of how much time that will take. I do think the overall message is a good one.
Yeah, let me ask you this as a prosecutor: can you speak to the right way to evaluate a probe? Because there were people who criticized Mueller for pursuing the crimes he did find. That seemed odd, because when you find the crimes that Manafort and Cohen and others were committing, you go after them or you farm them out. In the Cohen case, he farmed. In the Manafort case, he went to his boss at the time, Rosenstein, and said, I want to make sure this is in my ambit. And they said yes. Right. As you know, there were people, including many Trump allies and right-wing Republicans, who criticized that. I wonder if you could speak to that piece and then what we're seeing now this weekend, which is some other folks saying, well, wait a minute, maybe he didn't find collusion crimes, and that itself is held out as something wrong with the probe, when aren't prosecutors supposed to follow facts, not have a bias towards charging or not charging?
Sure. I mean, he starts with a mandate. His job is to press, and to press hard, which he did. That takes time. It requires that he be thorough, which he clearly was. It is in the country's interest that that be done in such a way that the public can come to respect the integrity of the investigation. I think he proved that by remarkably having very little leaks that dumped out of the office during the pendency of the investigation. I also think it was important that, as investigations go, this was promptly done. That was in the country's interest.
Very fast.
Right?
Very fast. On that point, I wonder, do you think Donald Trump has further shown what a mistake it was for him on both rule of law grounds and also basic strategy grounds to constantly malign Mueller and the probe as a witch hunt? I mean, Trump doesn't have as much credibility as one might to invoke these findings, given that he spent the better part of his presidency wantonly and often falsely impugning Mueller and his team.
Look, there's a human dynamic here that shouldn't be overlooked, and that is, as I've said on many occasions, I wouldn't wish a special counsel or independent counsel investigation on anyone, because it's a very difficult position to be. And I think, obviously, the president well recognizes by this point that the firing of the FBI director had the unintended consequence of putting him in the middle of a 22-month investigation.
Was he wrong to malign Mueller?
Well, I think it's still appropriate for a president to, or anybody to push back, because there's obviously it's in a political environment. Now,
did you always welcome it when you were running your probe if somebody told law enforcement folks that they were basically doing something illegal and people shouldn't cooperate with you and people shouldn't, do that, or they're rats?
Look, my job was to defend the integrity of the investigation whenever I saw a need to do so, which was why.
I know, but I'm just curious if you think that's good or not.
Well, I'll leave others to decide what ultimately is in the public's interest. No one ever said this was going to be easy. And what I think the takeaway from this weekend, beginning on Friday, is that it was in the country's interest to have this investigation. Sure. It was painful. We now have the results, at least in part, of that investigation.
I have to know, Robert, that while you opened by complimenting me for what you called the high-mindedness towards the rule of law, you're not exactly meeting us halfway here. You're actually seeming, I don't want to let you off air before I give you a chance, but you're seeming as a former independent counsel to say it's okay to call people rats. That's kind of mafia stuff. You don't want to fix that before I let you go?
That's going down something other than the high road, okay? I think let's keep this on the appropriate plane, which is there ought to be...
That's why I want to make sure. You're defending the president, calling it a witch hunt and the rats thing, are
look,
you?
I didn't start this conference. I sat here patiently listening to the last of your three principal guests accuse the Attorney General, including from Senator Blumenthal, of being that the Attorney General was clever, adroit, and devious. Eleanor Cliff referred to Attorney General Barr suggesting that the conclusion of the investigation was rigged, and your first guest, Flannery, accused the Attorney General's conduct of being that of venal, suspicious, and an operator. Mm-hmm. So, look, none of that is helpful, okay? That's not helpful either.
Well, my viewers are too smart for the game you're playing.
There's no game here. I listened to your three prior guests all think that this was comical. It's not comical at all. This is very serious stuff.
Sir, it's serious to me, too.
Sure.
You have the losing end of this argument. I hate to do this to you on national television, but you just missed two opportunities to address the president calling people rats for cooperating with law enforcement like yourself. You can own that.
That's not why you're doing what you're doing. Well, all you're trying to do is perpetuate a story. And, look, Democrats, elected Democrats and their
and now you're attacking other guests.
Elected Democrats and their acolytes are not prepared to accept the findings of this investigation.
Is turn to other guests. I did give you your time, and I will say this. After Flannery goes, I'm happy to give you a rebuttal. I pride myself on this, and I mean it. You've been on the show before. I just offer that so everyone knows you have the offer. I thank you, Mr. Ray, for coming on our special coverage tonight. John Flannery joins me now.
That's a cheap shot. Sorry to tell you, that's a cheap shot.
It's always interesting when you offer someone rebuttal time, and rather than saying thank you, that itself is characterized differently. But again, I work very hard on the diversity in all senses of the people we have here, and I appreciate Mr. Ray coming on. And my offer stands if he wants to come on after you. Well, I give you a chance to give your views.
Well, it's really something when a lawyer doesn't fill a gap in speaking to fill it with his own views. And you gave him an opportunity to contradict what he said. I said, venal, suspicious, and operator. That's how I characterize the Attorney General. I stand by it. I didn't hear anything to contradict it. And, it's very interesting.
I guess to push you on is, I guess what he would argue, and I want to stay on the substance here, is he would be concerned that some of the guests were issuing sweeping judgments of Barr before we know everything. But we've done a pretty careful analysis of the letter and what he's doing. So I guess the question for you would be, if viewers are coming in, or maybe viewers tuning in late and saying, oh, my God, what is all this?
Right.
Well, what's the fireworks? We're out of the footnotes and into the fire. What is your best evidence for your concern, and what we heard from Chairman Nadler is apparently a concern on the Hill, that Barr has now proceeded tonight with an incomplete picture?
Well, he certainly has, when you consider the fact that he cherry-picked basically a press release that upholds his decision to kill the entire investigation. And now the Justice Department has become the Just Us Department since the original attacks by, he fires Comey because Comey won't reassure him he's not a target, and he won't go easy with Flynn. And what happens after he fires him? He goes into the Oval Office and high-fives the ambassador from Russia, Kislyak, about that won't be a trouble anymore. And we're still asking whether or not there's a link between what our government is doing in connection with Russia and whether or not there is obstruction. I don't think that's a question.
That when it goes to the president's intent, then, do you think what you just mentioned would be in the obstruction section potentially as, okay, as I have emphasized, there's not collusion indictments, but Mueller may have amassed evidence that that kind of behavior seemed to be a negative for anyone looking at potential obstruction?
When you decide not to bring a case, you often put evidence in stovepipes and say independently they don't work instead of looking at the whole picture. For instance, when the Russians are setting up the equipment to scheme with America and to set up those outlets, and then they steal the information to put into it, early on, who do they identify? They identify Trump. He is the beneficiary, the only beneficiary of this. So are we to believe the Russians liked his show, The Apprentice, and they just wanted to prefer him over all the primary candidates? No, I don't think so. So you have to defy normal logic and what people on the street think. And when we tell a story, a narration of what makes sense or not, people get it, and the law follows that narration. But you know, one unintended consequence of this, in my opinion, destruction of a good investigation, going from Sessions to Whitaker to Barr, is that now there will be no pardon for any federal offense that could be brought in, say, the state of New York or the county of Manhattan, because there won't be any preclusive effect, no way to preclude what is going on. So I realize I'm taking a little bit of time, but I could take his time, can't I? He didn't decide to answer anything I said.
I'll tell you what, I mean it. People, if they watch regularly, they know I mean it. I've had Ray on several times. Right. He felt strongly, you felt strongly. He's invited back, you're invited back, you guys are invited together or back and forth. I really believe what I say out here, which is let's hear all the evidence, let's have good faith debates. And everyone always says you're a great presence and you look like Robert Redford. Well, we may have found the first person who doesn't think you look like Robert Redford. I don't know if Robert Ray will give you that honor.
Well, that's fine by me. John Flannery's fine. I've looked like him my whole life.
You've looked like John Flannery your whole life. Look. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.